Hi, I'm John Atack,
I'm Sam Atack.
and we are here to announce the launch of a website of his paper sculpture, so that you can go and have a look at some reasonably okay photographs.
Well, you took them, so I'm not sure if you're allowed to say that. Brilliant
Photographs.
They are really good. Yeah. And some I've just edited out from the video too.
Yeah. So you can get a good look at the sculpture. There are already a few videos about.
I think there are 4.
4 videos. It's not enough.
No.
And if anybody has that kind of money that they want to own a fantastic work of art, then we are taking applications, but they are very rare. In fact, there's only one of each of them. So far.
Yeah, so far.
So how old were you when you first learned about folding paper and making things?
Do you learned about it?
Well, when you
I remember
first
having some difficulty with some manuals, but I liked making paper and shape when I was 4.
How did it start? Yeah, you were 4. And who taught you?
Well, initially I just started doing it by myself, and then I saw something by Tomi.
Who is your aunt?
Yeah, aunt.
Yeah, on your mum's side. Who was a splendid person.
Yeah, she was very nice. I had simple things, but quite cool.
She taught you, did she teach the crane fold or something like that? Or frog
No, I
folds
taught that myself from a book, which is the first thing. I had a friend whose mother was into it, and I took apart things that she'd folded to try and understand them. Then I couldn't put it back together.
My brother did that with my watch.
Oh, that's mean. There's also some religious stuff in the website as well, which isn't as good.
Oh, we have the Church of Salmonality, and for anyone who would like to know all 71, is it, of the 108 precepts?
Yeah, 71. No, wait. There are only 71.
Commandments. Yeah, I know, but
they're
numbered up to...
You don't...
Yeah. Don't contend with Scripture, I think, is the term used by Christians. So you can learn how to live a life of sameness, salmonality. And so you would make these things at school, wouldn't you? I can remember when you were at primary school, I think that's grade school in America, I'm not totally sure, but between the ages of 5 and 11. Yep. You'd make these things, and what would the teachers do with them?
Oh, they'd throw them away.
They
found me making them.
They'd put them in the bin, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they put them in the bin.
Yeah. And that's basically what's happened to art and creativity in the educational system. Stop fiddling about, in the words of John Entwistle, I think it was, who wrote that actual song, not Pete Townsend. And you learned how to make very elaborate origami. Origami is made from a single sheet of paper with no glue. He did cheat a bit from time to time. No tearing. You've got to use all the paper to make the dragon, which is ultimately what it will end up being.
By cheating, he means I use some glue sometimes.
You did. Yeah. I'm ashamed of you, son. But it would take, like 3 months to make the astonishingly complex...
3 months.
Yeah.
And because of all the pre-folding you had to do.
All the fun
pre-folding. That was what I was going to say, by the way.
Yeah, we all know that.
I thought it might be inappropriate.
It might be inappropriate to have fun.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you'd fold 1,000 lines this way and 1,000 lines that way, and basically that.
I think I fold 150 by 150, which takes quite a while to do, actually.
150 by 150.
And then I'd have to make sure each line was folded in the correct direction, which wasn't very fun to make a huge grid.
And you do this stuff in your head, so that...
Oh yeah, you had to work it all out before you could make it.
I've never, I don't do 3-dimensional stuff. I do 2-dimensional stuff. And we hope that Ianarchist will give us a good title for this painting. The one before it, the Blind Man's Wallpaper, which is one of my favourite titles. I think that's wonderful. So hopefully we can... This isn't a finished painting, though. This is really a backdrop. I did work on it for a while, but it was 20 years ago.
Doesn't like the edges.
I didn't like
That edge.
That edge. I don't know what it was. It just offended me somehow. What can I say? Close to the edge, down by the river.
Yeah.
Round by the corner. I don't know what was round by the corner, but that's John Anderson and Yes for you. Thought I'd just mention that, Rex. Get and Gentle Giant, okay?
Yeah.
So now you've had them both mentioned. But it really was taking months to do these incredibly elaborate things, and there were people at MIT making all sorts of amazing origami, and the Japanese all queuing up making amazing origami. Only people who really know how to wrap presents, the Japanese. It's fantastic. You buy something in a Japanese shop, and you can just stand there and wonder as they wrap it. It's fantastic, wonderful. But then you learned about squashing paper, this complex technique. So that rather than taking 3 months to make something, you could just crush something until a few days later there would be a wonderful paper sculpture, which is why we're not talking about him doing origami. We're talking about paper sculpture.
I mean, I thought I'd figured out the squashing thing after I did the whole grid thing. But I've actually found some pieces from before that.
Early crumpling.
Yeah, early crumpling.
Yeah. And that would be worth a lot of money, by the way, if you want to invest in some of the early crumpling now, when it's just a few £100s. It'll just probably be worth £5 or £6.
Yeah, really selling me. Thanks.
Boost. One day, if you wait long enough. For a jumble
when I'm dead.
Yeah, which is probably going to be a very long time. I hope it's going to be a very long time.
I don't know, Christ. They say it goes by quite quickly.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're meant to see your whole life flash before you in like 3 seconds.
Do you see the flashing of your life flashing before you at the end of it?
It's probably like Ron Hubbard researching his cold-blooded and factual account of your last 60 trillion years, which is a million years, which was done in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Using large doses of amphetamines, according to his son, who took part in the research. That's the word that's used for it. But how long would it take to... I don't know. 60 million years research.
Yeah, there you go.
Cold-blooded and factual.
That's factual.
So I've now said something unpleasant about Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, and I'm not going to apologise.
No.
Because he's dead.
L. Ron
so there
Hoover.
wouldn't be any point. L. Ron Hoover, Joe's Garage, Frank Zappa. His comment on, which was actually introduced to me by a high-ranking Scientologist. He said, "This is hilarious."
So you were allowed to listen to that?
Well, nobody stopped us. I don't remember actually being told I couldn't read or do anything. And there's this notion of, that there's a kind of... Whereas into the 1950s, the Roman Catholic Church had the index of prohibited books, which was a very big index. Yeah. And I'm sure everything I've written would have got onto it somehow or other. They don't do that anymore.
No.
They're busy doing other things and trying to cover them up. But I do like Pope Frank. He's all right. Yeah. He's at least sorted out the Vatican Bank. They're not laundering money for the mafia anymore, which that's good to know, isn't it? That in the 21st century, the Vatican has finally stopped laundering money for the biggest criminal enterprise in Italy. And one of the biggest criminal enterprises in the United States as well, till the Russian mafia moved in. Oh yeah, we used to be... This is nothing to do with paper sculpture. This is nothing to do with paper sculpture. What are we doing?
Some of the paper sculpture is political. So
I think it's all political.
Everything has to do with my paper sculpture, actually. Anyway, let's...
But you've drawn from all sorts of themes. Remember, we had the great good fortune to go to the Prado in Madrid with Dan and Yuval. And there was an eagle there, and I had to take pictures of it, which I've subsequently lost.
That's fine.
Because you were working on an eagle, and you really wanted everything,
dimensions for an eagle.
To, that kind of stuff. And there'll be stories from mythology, which seem to usually have very large penises involved in them. There was a period of these where you find these...
so I get to put those up?
A Mexican...
Yes. Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah.
Huitzilopochtli. They're lovely words. Well, I wish I'd grown up with a religion that had Quetzalcoatl.
Me too. I really get.
But unfortunately, we didn't. So not much we can do about that now. I suppose we could try and relive our childhoods.
Yeah, I mean, there's therapy that does that.
Yeah, well, I mean, a great good friend Steve Hassan was telling born-in members of authoritarian cults that they could, create childhood memories. They can imagine these things. And I remember standing there and putting my hand up, which I do. If you put me in a room with people, I'm terrible. I used to be a very shy child. But now, if I'm at a conference somewhere, it'd be, I got a minute.
Yes.
So poor Steve had to put up with quite a few of these things. And I was sort of, well, just watch some kids' movies and South Park.
No. Well, yeah, that was my childhood, actually.
It was actually from the age of 1.
I was on it.
A virtual reality helmet.
I was Rex the Runt before that.
Rex the Runt, Rex the Runt.
My real source of inspiration.
Squiggly, wiggly dog.
Yeah.
We are at some point going to talk about Rex the Runt. In fact, let's maybe...
It's only 12 minutes in.
Only 12 minutes in.
Yeah.
Let's maybe do that some other time.
Yeah.
Rex the Runters, but we recommend the Church of Chemicalology.
Yes.
Which is amazing, but we'll recommend that in a separate video because that will give us an extra video. So, was it Mexican mythology that, yes, Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec, Huitzilopochtli, he's the one you have to rip people's hearts out every day to feed him because otherwise the sun won't come up tomorrow. Now, are you going to take that risk? Oh, we're not going to rip anybody's hearts out today and see if he'll... No, you wouldn't, would you? You'd be kind of going, oh, we better do that.
And he was also confused. Well, it's rumored that he might actually be the Jesus figure.
Quetzalcoatl, there are figures of him with a crucifix, with a cross. And when the conquistador, among the most savage and brutal human beings who've ever existed, went and pacified Mexico and the lands of the Inca, when they saw these images of Quetzalcoatl, and of course the Aztecs also believed that a savior was due to arrive just at that moment. You know, maybe why people like you believe that the Mayan calendar is true and that the world will end and did end in 2012, which is one of the basic beliefs of the Church of Samaninity.
Yep.
And you have to believe it because it's true.
Yeah. Scientifically proven.
Yeah, he's experienced it.
Yes.
And we're all just playing pretend now. It's all over, kids. It's done. So, I don't know. I shouldn't say this. I'm your father, but I'm really impressed with the work you've done, and I think anybody who's in their left mind would also be impressed by this. So there is a new website, samatac.com or samatac.co.uk. You can flip between the two if you want. It works on your phone. It's one of the things I liked about it because so many websites now are designed on the computer, and the 50% of people who look at them on their phone are having a problem, so they watch YouTube instead. And that's what you're doing now. You could sneak off and watch YouTube, didn't you? But this video was recommended
to you. I just
you.
had to pick a different image for the mobile phone as compared to the computer, and it switches, which is nice.
Oh, well, why not just design it on the phone and stick it on the computer? Now there's a thought. So, the new web page there. We also, of course, have Lyrical Wax, the new site for poetry.
Poetry things. Oh, I hate poetry.
I hate poetry. It's so stuck up. They've got their noses in the air all the time, those poets. You know, they're supercilious. Supercilious. But who wants to be just cilious when you can be supercilious?
Supercilious.
It's a lot not to ask. So lots of new things happening. And he continues to make squashed paper sculpture which if you look at the photos, and it was interesting, wasn't it? Because when I took the photos, it had to invent this little Lazy Susan turntable, which I covered with black paper, so that oh dear, and you can see the videos done with that, and I'm kind of moving the thing around in front of the camera, giving this fantastic rostering camera shot.
I think the first time you did it, you had your thumb in the shot.
You can see my thumb in the shot at several points, I think.
Wonderful.
I think in some cases it's almost the best thing.
I think it did work.
Outside of the paper sculpture itself, it's the best thing. And the
painting behind it.
Susan. And the painting behind it, but the thumb is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Quite irrelevant.
I thought you did a very good job with those, really.
Yeah, and I'm just taking pictures as fast as I can, which is the way that I generally... As most people who know me, there isn't time to research any of this, Let's just make up a story about the conquistador invading Mexico under Don Cortez in 1519, was it, or 1517? So one of them's I think it must have been 1517, just before the Martin Luther non-king hammered all of his stuff about not being good Catholics anymore.
And Zwingli, is that his name?
Zwingli, who is almost never mentioned, that in Switzerland at the same time as Martin Luther is making life a misery for people in was it Saxony, because there was no Germany back then, nothing like it. Well, he was making life a misery for people and introducing ideas that would become Calvinism, and in Switzerland you got Zwingli, and the Calvinism in Switzerland developed to such a point you weren't allowed to lock your door, so they could come in and see what you're doing, make sure you weren't having sex, for example, which I think seems to be the fundamental obsession of people who want to control us one way or another. You mustn't do that, it's dirty. What do you mean dirty? I washed. It's not dirty at all. It's very clean. Very clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, paper sculpture, but I think that the way that you've brought ideas from everywhere in your life together, everything that happens to you seems to flow through this, and that seems to me a very poetic sort of process, really. So why don't you write poetry about it on the paper and then crumple it, and people would have to try and reassemble it after they'd read the poetry. Rossetti, when he buried his wife, poor man, he threw in a volume of poems that he'd handwritten for her. Some years later, he had her exhumed so he could get the poems back. So be very careful with your art to keep a copy. That's the lesson here.
I'd have to make one.
Three-dimensional printer.
If you give me money for a three-dimensional printer...
Give him the money for a three-dimensional printer and he'll make exact copies in plastic.
Hey! They work in any medium.
You could actually make copies in virus, couldn't you, these days? Or DNA.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in fact, I saw an artwork being sprayed with DNA in it, information.
That is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So beautiful.
It sold for a lot of money, too.
Yes. Yeah. But do you see this banana taped on the wall behind me? For $150,000.
I'm selling 4 licenses, and it's not the actual banana. It's the ability for you to do it yourself and call it a Maurizio Catalan.
But you get that, don't you? That's what you get. The 4 people who bought that object all got a thing from him saying they could get not only a new banana every time the banana rots, but I think they're allowed to get new tape as well. And it's still a Maurizio Catalan original. I must say, and I've said it before, I really admire Maurizio Catalan. Of all the conceptualists, he is head and shoulders above them, because what he's doing is actually insightful and profound. And so is what some of Ai Weiwei's work. And the fact that he's risked his life doing it
does make him more
he's
significant.
Not living in China anymore, but he's still risking his life saying nasty things about President Xi and stuff like that. But I thought the bit where he started breaking vases, antique vases, that was a little bit absurd. And of course, when they were in the that beautiful building, the Tate Modern, with all that weird stuff in it, beautiful building, that he put down the ceramic beads on the floor. I actually saw that exhibition, but I was not one of the people that walked over it. So therefore, not one of the people that breathed in the toxic dust that it gave off. Isn't
Nice.
conceptualism brilliant? So, is there anything else about paper? I mean, we used to use what's called elephant hide paper, which we had to buy from Germany because you can't get the stuff anywhere here.
I mean, we still brought the paper I use.
It's from France, so it's a bit closer.
Yeah.
But
yeah. It's very different using elephant hide. Very thick, or like beating it into shape.
Yeah, folding a meter sheet of elephant hide. No, just.
Well, and then I'd
like
have to put
weeks,
elastic bands on it, so it would hold that shape before I could work on it any further, and so on.
All sorts of bulldog clips and washing line clips.
It's very annoying because you wouldn't know if it would work till the very end of making it.
Yeah, that's true of the souffle though as well.
Yeah, it's true
because it can collapse when it comes out of the oven, and that's it.
But
so
it's pretty successful. So,
would you like to make a souffle? I really like souffles, and I haven't had one since I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah, they're really nice.
You should make me one.
No, you should make me one.
I don't know how to make one.
I do.
Well, you teach me.
Okay, you get some eggs and beat them up and put them in a thing and put them in the oven. Pretty simple, isn't it?
In a thing.
Well, you've got to get them frothy enough, you see. So I presume you do one of those meringue things first. Whip the egg whites and then fold.
So origami video
folding.
And souffle
folding.
Instructional.
Folding.
Links it back.
Stuff about conceptual art.
So it's off the theme of.
It's off the cuff.
Sculpture.
It's off the cuff. I've got it. Oh, I haven't got anything written on my cuff. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
Do you think we'll put the Jesus up on the website?
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to see, unless you pay money, his comment about
let's just call it Jesus.
Jesus, the cross, and what the Pope is doing. Maurizio Catalan also did a Pope struck
by meteor. Yeah, that was inspiration.
Which starts us all off. But bless them all. Yeah. As long as they're living decent, forgiving Christian lives, they'll forgive us. Isn't that true?
I hope so. No, yeah, I mean they have to.
And they'll lead
the rules.
Yeah, lead us not into temptation. They won't do that to us either.
So we're putting up the Aztec thing. So I should explain.
No, we're not. We're not showing that smut.
So why did we talk about it in the video?
Well, so that people will pay money to see it. You don't understand commerce, do you?
No, I think I'm starting to get
There's
it.
the Pompeii Museum, which everybody gets to see, and then there's the Secret Museum. Do you know about the Secret Museum?
Okay.
When it's Vesuvius. Is it Vesuvius that went off and the Roman city of Pompeii was engulfed and left all of these people in various terrified poses?
Yes, that was terrible.
Or sleeping, as the case may be. But there's a secret museum. When the Victorian Society discovered this, they found the insides of ordinary houses, the swimming baths were absolutely littered with what we today call pornographic images. Pornographic's a bit of a funny word because pornos and graphos. Pornos means harlot, prostitute, and graphos means to write. So it's something that's written about a prostitute. Well, these people weren't prostitutes and it wasn't writing. But we call it pornography because we're not very good with words. It's like the word stereo, which most people think means having two loudspeakers. But it doesn't mean solid.
No.
Television, telephone, there are all sorts of words.
I mean, the Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl.
I saw a Mexican sculpture of Quetzalcoatl doing the naughty things.
Doing the naughty things. So this is more and more tempting to you. But the Secret Museum, and you have to actually have special permission to see it, is just about every sexual position you could think of. Yeah. And these were on display quite publicly. In your house, you'd have these things as like a freezer around the top of the wall. So while you were throwing up after dinner, which is another thing, bulimia was a big thing.
Yeah.
The vomitarium.
Well, you already said public bathhouses, didn't you?
Yeah, but vomitaria as well.
Vomitaria, yeah.
That you could...
Vomitaria.
Well, they'd eat and then throw up.
And would they have a special room to do it in?
The vomitarium.
Wow.
But I think they actually, that they probably became used to the idea. I can't imagine sitting in a room eating while people are vomiting. That is just so. I hope they did, and I'm sure that one of our, maybe Stefan Machia will know more about this than I do. Or maybe Yuval will come along and tell us all about.
He knows everything.
He knows a lot about Roman history.
Yeah, it's true.
Not so sure about everything, I must say, because he doesn't know anything about China or India. He doesn't even know they exist.
It's really weird.
It's really weird.
When he's listened to lectures on Chinese history, but he hasn't done anything in depth.
No. It's just appalling, really.
It's lazy.
Lack of concern and the lack of cultural appropriation that's obviously going on there. He should be stealing things, and he isn't. But the Greeks, is that cultural appropriation? If you borrow something from a previous century, well, this is
writing.
Vaguely, writing. Should we be allowed to use the words that people used in other countries?
Can we borrow from Old English to make our modern language?
None of it. We must not be used words thereof, Yoda say. 800 years old and he still can't pass a sentence properly. It's appalling. Appalling it is.
Appalling it is.
And
appalling is it?
Tis.
Tis.
Yes, it is. It is. Tis. So, new website, Paper Sculpture.
Yep.
New YouTube channel, Lyrical Wax.
Wax.
WHACKS. With Ursula Wake.
We'll provide links to that, right?
We'll provide links to everything.
All the links.
Yeah. Provide links to Paul McCartney's last album, actually.
That was very good.
Egypt Station. I was certainly one of the people who, it was cool to go after John Lennon and ignore Wings and all of that stuff, which was, after all, a feminine hygiene product, as well as Paul McCartney's band. But the Egypt Station and New, the album before it, which is a few years ago, 2013, I think. Fantastic. That is a genius. And he's got a lot more money than we have. So what we'd like to see is for him to actually come and see the secret museum of Sam's work and give us a lot of love. Because all you need is love. That was Lennon, wasn't it? Yeah.
Imagine no possessions.
Yeah, playing a £100,000 piano, imagining no possessions as he played. Is the story about him owning an apartment block in New York and having a whole floor refrigerated to keep Yoko's fur coats? Is that a true story?
I hope not.
Yeah. Well, times there are changing.
Yeah.
So I think we've made fools of ourselves enough for one evening, and we're very sorry.
Yes.
Yes. We apologise completely if we failed to offend you in some way.
I think we've probably done that.
Probably. But, I mean, Stuart Lee's going to need a script sooner or later, so we might as well work it out for him.
Yeah.
Stuart Lee, very good. See him in the links below. We saw him in just before lockdown, wasn't it? Beginning of February. And, well, it was March, it was lockdown, but it was in February. And I started crying within 90 seconds of him coming on the stage. And if I find the guy who poked me in the eye, I'm going to really give him one, I tell you. But through the whole of the two shows, Snowflake and...
And in fact, he accused you of bringing your teenagers to the show.
He did. He looked around the audience and he said, the people who brought their teenagers are sitting there going, oh, whatever. And that they'll be, so that they'll be able to say that they saw Stuart Lee before he died. He wasn't looking well.
No.
Yeah, but
quite that.
Anyway, that's Paper Sculpture.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for wondering what on earth these guys are going on about.
30 minutes of it.
Yeah, reactive meandering. Kevin Kember, who was the wife of Jane Kember, poor man, who was the head of the Guardian's Office of Scientology. When I was 21, I published a book called Wordworks. And I sent out surveys because that's what you did if you were involved in this thing, where I'd send out one of the pieces, they were prose poems, a page or 2 pages long, send out one of the pieces with a survey questionnaire. And that was, of course, to get them engaged so that they'd give you the money and buy the book, because that's what it's all about in
I think we use surveys now.
Governing policy of Scientology. Make money.
Make more money. Make others produce as to make
even more money. And then it repeats some of them again. And the governing policy of a religion should be help people, be nice to people, but instead it's make money.
I stole a lot of religious rules from L. Ron Hubbard.
You did.
See if you can spot them all.
Yeah, there will be a prize. Yet to be announced. Probably be something fairly rude, now I come to think about it.
That's a good present.
From Sam's Secret Museum of Paper Sculpture.
Let's make that a real event.
I wrote this book, WordWorks, and I sent out these surveys, and I sent one to Kevin Kember. I never met Kevin Kember. He used to train people, so presumably he was in charge of training the spies and agents who would do breaking and entering. They're trained in lying. They went to prison. 11 of them went to prison, including Hubbard's wife, Mary Sue. Anyway, I sent this thing out, and he came back and he said that what I'd written was reactive meandering. And it stayed with me. That was 44 years ago. And it stayed with me as one of the most wonderful things anybody has ever said about my work, that it's reactive meandering. It's like, like at Tom and Charlotte's wedding, where I read out a poem, and her grandfather, who's a baritone in a choir, beautiful voice, he read out W.H. Auden's Tell Me the Truth About Love, one of the great Auden, I think that's the one, about how nice getting married is. Not the one about death that's in 4 funerals and a wedding.
I like that.
Weddings and a tea party. Reactive meandering. Anyway, I'd read this poem, and he read Auden, and this guy walked up to me. I'd never met him before, and if you know him or have his phone number, I'd be quite interested to see if he has any other comments to offer to me. But he said, what a great reading voice Charlotte's granddad has. And I said, yeah, it was fantastic, wasn't it? He said, you were pretty good. It's a shame about the poem they gave you to read. Now, what he'd not got, which is probably the fault in my performance, is it was one of my own poems. So
I wish somebody would say something that nice about my work.
I was made up for the whole day. I was on cloud 9 that this guy had said this. It was just somehow so perfect, which means I must be psychologically very weird indeed. But I think we'll probably better end on that note. I'm John Atack.
I'm Sam Atack.
Thanks so much for your time. Hi, John here. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it very much if you would click like, as well as subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Every dollar helps, and we welcome new patrons on Patreon, or you can make a one-off payment with any currency through PayPal. Thanks so much. Fun
pre-folding. That was what I was going to say, by the way.